Okay, today we're going to talk about getters and setters. At least we're going to discuss the setter part. We may not get to getters, but take a look at this. This is again, we're looking at uh, the run class, which is what this is. And in this run class, just as a review, we said triangle dot shape, my triangle, but you can see dot shape is has that dreaded red squiggly line. So does base. So does height. And this height does, and this height does. Basically, every time I show this red mark right here, it's going to show an error. So where do these errors come from? Well, let's take a look in the my shape class, of which is being instantiated right here. And looking at this, we see that every time there is a red squiggly line, like for my triangle dot shape equals my triangle. Okay, let's see, where is this dot shape underscore? That's this, and look, has the private access modifier prefix to it. Let's take a look at this one, triangle dot base. Where is base? Right here. And that also has private affixed prefix to it. Height.ht, where's that? It's right here, and we can see that it also has the private prefix attached to it. So these are access modifiers. And taking a look at this, these access modifiers here under my shape prevent anybody else from outside the class from getting to it. Okay, and that is called abstraction. Now, taking a look at this, I always considered the private like a ATM, in which you have your data fields that are private, like, for example, your balance. Now, you wouldn't want anyone else, or the bank doesn't want even the account holders to get direct access to this balance. So how would they prevent that? Well, possibly by adding prefixing the balance field with the word private. That would prevent others from getting to it, or even yourself from getting direct access to it. So if you have, like, for example, a treasure chest that seems locked out by to the public, how can anyone get to it? Because this balance has got to be changed. And how do people get to it? By public methods that actually access the balance in a controlled way. Like, for example, you could have methods like deposit $40, and you can have withdraw. Let's say you're withdrawing $20 on another day. So these are going to be public methods. Okay, that's going to be public, and that's going to be public. And together they can actually access balance, because now how is it that they can? Because they're all in the same class. So those members of the same class that is in balance has access to it. They can modify it. Here we can deposit money into the balance. That would increase the balance. Here we can withdraw the money into balance. That would decrease balance. Okay, how do you do that? You do it through getter and setter methods. And notice the getter and setter methods are public. And we can see that the data fields, here we have name, that is private. Okay, so the way it works is, if you imagine this was inside of here, then the main class would access the public methods in order to get to them. That's the concept of the ATM. Now let's take a look at another aspect, and this is the getters and setters. This is what they are here for, because the getters and setters themselves are public and the data fields are private. the public has access to these getter and setter fields. Here we have get name and we have set name. So we're going to take a look at setters specifically right now. And how do you set the name? You have a parameter attached to a publicly accessible method, and that is how you can influence name. You can change the name by saying something like calling set name and saying Hal as an example, and it'll say this dot name equals new name, string new name, this dot name equals new name, and along with this will influence this to become Hal. Same with this. Okay, let's take a look at this. We have initially, for example, the shape with the underscore is my triangle. Of course, we can't get to it because the string, the shape right here is private. Okay, and so this right here is connected to this data field. Okay, so here we have my triangle dot shape underscore. That is necessarily, that is referring to, that is a reference to this line right here in the shape in the my shape class, and it's not able to get to it. You can see the red squiggly line because of the private access modifier. Okay. However, here, what we did was we still kept the private string shape. That's still the same. And we still have our constructor here. But what we did was we added a method called set shape with a parameter string shape. And so now we have this dot shape equals shape. And then we have system out print line set shape, and it's going to print shape. Okay, that is how we can influence the name, what this string shape says. So let's take a look at this actual example. So here is the main class right here. It's going to specifically create or instantiate the my shape class, and we're calling it my triangle, and then we're saying my triangle dot base equals 10. Now this is going to be my shape. This is going to be triangle dot base equals 10, where is right here, and we don't designate it with the private access modifier. We're just keeping it public, and as a matter of fact, we can just say public here, public. So I'm making everything public that I can, just to make a point. So the only thing that is private yet is the string name shape with an underscore, and we can see that we can actually set. And I created another method, a method called set shape with a parameter called shape. And again, the thing we're doing here is not only are we using set shape as an answer, if you will, to the private string shape name right here. The private is an access modifier that will prevent direct access to it. But here, not only are we granting access to set shape, which will in turn change the name of shape to whatever name that we called it in the parameter, it also does some checking for us. In other words, we want to make sure that our shape at least contains the word, somehow contains the word triangle, or else it'll say shape name needs to have the word triangle. So long as it does not contain triangle, it will carry on and proceed forward. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so we're saying my shape, set shape equals my triangle. And let's see what the parameter, it does contain triangle, so it should work. Let me go ahead and run it. And let me drag this up here. Okay, set shape my triangle. Okay, let's do my triangle. Let's do 8000 triangle, and it will hopefully fall into the new rules here. If shape contains triangle, if it doesn't, then it'll produce this. So let's try this, and it does do it. And let's see what let's see if it compiles with just this, and we already can see there's a problem right there. Let's see. Let's try this. Aha! Shape name needs to have the word triangle. Okay, so let's try triangle. And this is my triangle. And it does do that. It does compile. This is my triangle. Okay, so that is the benefit of getter and setter. Or shall I say, that is the benefit of setter. This allows you to make sure, like an ATM, this makes it so that if this is a private area, private, I'll just say PRI for private, we can still get to it through public methods. And using getters and setters, at least in the setter, this allows us some sort of checking on the input. And that's exactly what we did here. We use this if-then statement. So if the shape does not contain triangle, because that is the not value right there, it'll print out shape needs to have the word triangle. Okay, and if it does have the word triangle, it will skip down and it'll say, it'll just continue along with the program. And as you can see, it still continued along with the program. It just threw up this error, this message that shape needs to have the word triangle.